all electronic devices, please, including mobile phones, to be switched to silence. And let me begin with introductions. My name is Deputy Hilary Jearn, and I'm the Chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel.
Deputy Tom Coles, Vice Chair.
Deputy David Ward, Panel Member.
Deputy Alex Curtis, Panel Member.
Constable David Johnson, Panel Member.
Constable Andy Joe, Minister for Infrastructure.
Andy Skate, Chief Officer for Infrastructure and Environment.
John Littlewood, Head of Technical Support Services Projects for Ops and Transport.
And Ellen Littlechild, Group Director, Operations, Transport and Sport.
So let us begin, Minister, with expenditure and saving proposals. So the department's revenue head of expenditure has increased from 60.62 million in 2025 to 63.27 million in 2026. Beyond inflationary adjustments, have there been any additional in items or cost pressures contributing to this 2.65 million rise, and how much of it represents genuine service growth that islanders will feel a tangible benefit from?
Well, I don't think there will be significant growth in any of the areas. We've got massive challenges, like all departments. We, within infrastructure, spend a lot of money that isn't on staff, so therefore we face challenges. I think, for example, our electric has gone up by £1 million since 2020 on a bill of under £4 million. So it's significant growth in some areas. I think we've spoken before about the price of chemicals. And we've seen significant growth there. So whilst we're seeing an increase in our revenue, we will be doing well to provide business as usual across the department.
And actually, this was my second question about the fact that you've said that before about non-staff costs. It represents the majority of your department's expenditure. And you've mentioned electric and chemicals as a big cost. How are you managing to ensure that is being kept under control going forward, those kind of costs? And is there anything more than electric and chemicals being kind of significant growth in expenditure?
Well, it depends where you start and where you stop. So some of our contracting work, which, our parks and garden budget is the same as it was almost 20 years ago. And that's because we've outsourced a lot of things, that we do things differently. But when we've outsourced to contracts, and we've relet a lot of those contracts recently, and I have to say I'm really pleased to see the improvements in how we manage those contracts. But, for example, the living wage will have impacted on some of those contracts. So we're seeing higher than forecast expenditure at the time we outsource things. We keep things under review. Do we continue to do things ourselves? Do we outsource them? Do we do them differently? And, the team have been doing this for a long time. So I pay tribute to their efforts, because when I look to see what savings and efficiencies can I make, you do have to look fairly hard to find them. That doesn't mean to say that we can't be more efficient, because any organisation you can be more efficient. But the team have done a lot of the low-hanging fruit, as I would describe, as being harvested a long time ago. So we are seeing pressures in a number of areas. You'll be familiar with Serco, the contract with Serco. We've given the 12 months notice. If we can terminate that any earlier, we'd be delighted to terminate that earlier. But that's a significant overspend for us this year. And we believe that by managing it in-house, we'll be more efficient. And hopefully we can have some exciting products in terms of revenue as well.
And so in our most recent quarterly hearing, you raised that concern that RPI-based uplifts do not cover costs of materials and energy. Has this gap widened in 2026? Will this widen? And how are you managing it? Because we were just saying about it being the increase that we've just talked about is actually from those.
So we've got to continue to look for opportunities. So, the team are going through a zero budgeting process, which is something I advocate, something I'm very familiar with. So rather than just saying chip on cost of living each year, actually go back to see whether you need to do things or don't need to do things. And we can find some efficiencies with that process. We've also had a number of our staff have again gone through productivity training. So I'm a big advocate of lean process management. So often the people on the front line know the answers, how to do things more efficiently. And so we're encouraging staff to come up with ideas and suggestions. So, you know, we're doing what we can where we can. You know, we tried probably 12 months ago, we looked at stopping the bring banks for recycling, which would have been around £250,000 saving. The feedback wasn't positive at all, even in the parishes that have got curbside recycling. So I think St John and St Juan don't have bring banks. I don't know if you've got any St Mary's, David. Still?
We wanted to hang on to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've we identified we've introduced curbside recycling in some places for many years. St Martin's come online next month, but the feedback was that people wanted to use it. And when I was on a visit at Grainville playing fields recently with the Constable of St Saviour looking at parking for St Saviour's School, it was really surprising how many people, not just from St Saviour, because I knew some people from other parishes that were using that facility. So we want to encourage people to recycle, so we continue to offer that service.
So, and I suppose we're talking about savings there, and the department has to deliver 2.19 million savings in 2026, which is an increase of 760,000. And last year, you were just talking about the fact that trying to do that savings there with recycling, and it wasn't popular, and so therefore that hasn't materialised. So what other plans do the department have to try to get to this target?
Well, I think our savings target for this year is £3.8 million savings, which is around 4% of our £90 million expenditure budget. I think that's achievable. I generally do.
But what will you be savings on? What are the things that will be?
Well, just doing things more efficiently. I mentioned the fact that we've relet a number of contracts, so that's a positive step. One challenge we've got is we're facing more competition for waste, both green waste and inert waste, and there's less activity in the construction sector. So where we've identified revenues, that's likely to go down unless we see significant change in that market. So, we've got to keep our eye on the ball. I was with the team last week talking about potential savings in one area where we've got practices that have been there for many years which are no longer appropriate, and so we're looking to change those. So we're in dialogue with staff and trade unions. There's
Yeah, sorry.
Deputy,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. You mentioned the competition. What do you mean by competition for? you
Well,
said about
other
that.
people are offering more and more contractors offer a chipping service now. So instead of bringing us large trucks of waste, they
Right.
chip it all down and mulch it down. We see other people offering solutions for inert waste. So,
Is that a good thing?
well, it is a great thing,
Yeah.
but not from our budget perspective. It's not a great thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so
you want to
whereas-
keep the States Department going?
So whereas we would have received revenue for that,
Yeah.
the great thing is it extends the lifetime of our facilities, and it's about the predictability. So where we've got staff, we need to see what if the reduction is going to be sustained, then we need to redeploy staff, for example. So we've just got to evolve. It's just like being in any business, isn't it? You evolve to the market conditions.
Okay.
And of course that's related to income and the reduction in income. But then you also have at the same time that there is this need for savings, and I'm still trying to understand what the department has made decisions on how to make those savings happen. Like what will not be happening because of those to make sure that you reach those targets.
I don't see us stopping any services.
Not stopping services this year, so we're doing some detailed service reviews to make efficiency savings. So what we do is We've got a number of two sections at the moment that we're looking at doing a complete review and looking at making savings. We're also doing work such as energy audits, so where we know we've got significant costs to do with electricity, water, gas on some of those things, looking at what we can do and how we can do things efficiently. We're reviewing our vehicle usage. We've got some really good data now with tracking, looking at what vehicles we can reduce, introducing a new tracking policy next year, looking at other income opportunities as well. So there's lots of things that are going on to try and look at how we can stay within that cash limit.
Okay.
I suppose one area, sport is one area where, we won't be spending as much money on staffing at Oakfield as we were at Fort Regent. So that's going to be a change. But the responsibility of Fort Regent switches from sport to Property Holdings. So Property Holdings then get the bill for making sure that Fort Regent is secure. So it is a balance at times.
There's a couple of savings in there that are sort of self-fulfilling in the Fort Regent growth funding reduction that the minister said there is a reduction in the staffing and the change in the nature of that. There was a previous bid in for additional maintenance at the ambulance station. That's falling away. But the office savings as well, the move to Union Street, there are scheduled buildings to be, the lease is given up. Yeah. And provided we can make those at the right time, then the savings should materialise from those being given up.
I think the other thing I'd just add on the savings target, it's not just, we also have, I would call it a hidden savings target within the department, just to stand still. So income uncertainty is one of those where we're seeing less income in certain areas. That certainly affects our revenue. We also see uncertainty around responding to events. So if we have a big storm event, obviously that's an unknown cost we have to bear within year. Contract inflation is another one that we do see. So there's a number of these, I guess, other elements of our business which are added to the corporate saving we're expected to find as well.
Thank you. And finally, for me, the funding for the regulation of care sits within the £750,000 budget line for community site improvements relating to safeguarding and accessibility. Are these tied to particular sites or meant for wider community use?
So the care would be under the SIPes, and we would be providing the facilities for them. So the question would have to go to colleagues from SIPes.
To SIPes. Okay, thank you. I'll pass on to Deputy Coles.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to a question area about capital programme and projects. I'm going to start with the Investing in Jersey programme and proposed capital investment fund. So, Minister, this budget confirms that the Jersey Capital Investment Fund will, if approved, only be established in principle, with separate legislation to follow. When does the department expect the fund to be operational, and will the terms of governance be when will the terms of governance be published?
Well, a lot of that is Treasury related because it is about funding. But we've been working hard with the team on that project, and I do think that the Investing in Jersey initiative is a good way. I think we've discussed it before. I forget which forum it is in. It might have been in the CSP last week, but the idea of having longer term capital programs in place with surety has got to be welcomed, and so I would like to think that that will happen sooner rather than later. And when it comes to the Assembly, I would expect the governance element to be part of that proposal.
Yeah. How far along are the proposals in the Investing in Jersey programme that this budget is seeking agreement for in principle?
I think they're a fair way again, but so we know what we want to do. So, but the funding element is really a question for colleagues from Treasury to give you the detail of that. But I do think, as I say, by having a Jersey investment fund where we can get some long-awaited projects going, and I think that's to be welcomed.
So, can you clarify what the £6 million allocation to Property Holdings is specifically intended to fund, and confirm whether this funding is being sought within this budget or extended for a later phase?
Well, I think we all know the condition of Highlands College, for example, and we're looking to accelerate the work at Highlands College, which we hope to finish next year, which would be 2 years earlier than previously planned. We've got, we continue to have the work on the fire safety in the school estate that we're working upon. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think anything going into capital programme in relation to properties is welcome. We run a big property portfolio of over nearly 1,000 properties. That's one of our big pressure areas. We have a reactive and both preventative maintenance side, and we know we spend levels of which are lower than we would hope. So any money that comes into that either goes to a major refurbishment, either a specific property that's subject to specific risks. So fire safety in schools is a good example of that, where we've got known issues that we need to improve various buildings. Roofs always need replacing. There's a whole variety of properties where that money would be targeted to.
So, Minister, we noted from one of our previous hearing about the mechanics of the funding. And obviously, as you said already, that the Invest in Jersey Fund has got the responsibility of Treasury. So I suppose the question around this is, has there been ongoing discussions with you as the Minister for Infrastructure about the access to this funding that will eventually be in this fund, and how that is going to be ring-fenced and safeguarded for your projects?
Yeah, of course. So we've worked closely not only with Treasury but with other ministers around the concept of the Investing in Jersey Fund, and then also what we believe should be included in there. So it's not just about funding infrastructure department initiatives, it helps a lot of the departments.
You've also said that the fund gives infrastructure more leverage, but Treasury will control the allocations. How does this give infrastructure more leverage if it still has to compete with other departments for the same part?
Well, I think what it does is it gives us, as I've said, I've tried to explain this longer term vision, which we don't have, and I think a personal view is that we should be having longer term budgets as well, as it used to be the case, because we don't have that surety at the moment, and we need to have that surety.
So would you accept that there needs to be probably more defined priorities than within the Invest in Jersey?
Well, I think the challenge will be we know the areas we want to invest in, and then the challenge will be how much money is released to start, and then where that money goes, and that will really depend on the priorities of the day.
So, and just for understanding the 2026 budget, because that obviously we're discussing that now, and that, but the fund is not set up yet. So, this 6 million sits within the budget rather than going into the fund. And would it then, if the fund is set up next year, would that then be diverted? Would it be then put into the fund, kind of within next year's part?
I honestly don't know the mechanics, but we know that we've got to do, for example, Highlands sooner rather than later. And I think that's widely known. The mechanics of how future budgets will be designed and delivered will depend very much on the structure and the governance around the Investing in Jersey Fund.
I think we're just making sure that that 6 million stays with, right, if it ends up in another fund, and that could be reprioritised in the new government. So it's just trying to make sure that when we agree with the budget for 2026...
Whilst I'm sat here, I'm going to be fighting my corner. But priorities change. If something changes, we as a government and an assembly will have to respond to those changes. And, so nothing's cast in stone, but I think it's as good as we can get today.
Can I just ask about the Highlands thing, the £6 million going into Highlands? Does that mean Highlands is set to stay there for the next few years? No. Or is that still up in the air as to whether Highlands remains on that site?
I would say, I don't think the full £6 million is going to Highlands, Dave. I think it's around £2 million.
Okay.
But it's to make sure that it's serviceable to operate.
Right.
So in terms of long-term decisions around Highlands, I don't think any firm decision has been made, but this is about making sure that our young and old people who utilise that facility can do so safely.
Okay.
So it's back to making sure buildings are fit and proper
purpose.
and safe.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move slightly on to estate projects, and because it's been mentioned, I'll jump into my question plan on Highlands College, because there was more questions than we had. We can see that there's the line for 2026, but there's nothing further beyond 2026. So please can you advise why feasibility work for the future of Highlands College has not been planned by government, particularly as part of the CSP priority for lifelong learning?
Well, the priority for lifelong learning, you'll have to talk to the education minister about lifelong learning. We provide the facilities for different departments to utilise. So the reason there's nothing in 27 and 28 is because we intend to finish the work in 26. We've brought work forward because of the immediate need. And I had the pleasure of attending the graduation ceremony recently at the Freedom Centre. And what a great advert that was for Highlands to see so many people receiving their degrees. I thought it was really something we should be celebrating more widely.
Is this another budgetary challenge that you face with the fact that you are the service provider for other departments and you rely on their funding to be able to deliver?
That's why, we have to work together to identify the priorities and agree priorities. And, we do our level best, but there will always be winners and losers. And when you go into negotiation, someone may not be happy. You can't always have a win-win situation.
We also note that the crematorium refurbishment now sits under infrastructure and environment rather than SIPES. Why was this project redesignated, and has the scope changed as a result of the transfer?
Well, the crematorium services are running very well at Trinity. Unfortunately, I've been too often to the new facility already. And we're going to take the opportunity to see the burners, I think that's the correct term, are coming to the end of their life. And so we're going to take the opportunity to see whether or not we replace the burners in their current location or provide a new facility. And I think with the hospital going to the top of Westmount, it's more appropriate to find a different site for the burners and the services. The gardens will not be touched. There's so much emotion attached to those gardens; they cannot be touched. Yeah.
And it's also just worth pointing out the crematorium and services are now part of Infrastructure and Environment Department, so that the team have transferred into this department as a result of that. So, yeah.
And what's the timeline for that? If we're saying it's part of now to decide potentially find a new site, etc. How long are we looking at?
Well, it's not going to happen in this government. The preliminary work will happen in the next 12 months, I'd say. But we own sites ourselves, and I think we've probably got one or two sites where it could potentially go, which would make it more efficient.
So this money in the government plan at the moment is for the current sites to improve the current facility at Westmount. Obviously, if there was a new facility on a new site, that would need additional capital funds.
The St Helier Skate Park allocation has been brought forward from 2028 to 2026. Why has this project been accelerated, and how was that decision balanced against other competing estate priorities?
Well, I don't think it has been accelerated. I think that it was due to be done this year, actually. We've been working, one of the officers has been working very hard, engaging with stakeholders to try and provide a skate facility in and around St Helier, which hasn't been available since the closure of the harbour. We've looked at dozens of sites, and I think we go to planning on the 4th of December, I think it is. And the idea is that with the equipment we put at South Hill, if we get plan permission, once Fort Regent is completed, we'll transfer to Fort Regent. And the facility that we create will become an area for young and old to learn to cycle. So something we're trying to do at schools as well is put in what I describe as a cycle proficiency route. And so that's the idea for South Hill, is once we've relocated the skate park to Fort Regent, then we'll make it a cycle-friendly facility.
Funding for total major refurbishments is identified as 6.7 million, rounding up, in 2026, but reduces to 4.47 in 2027. What specific projects account for the 4.47 million of funding allocated in 2027?
Well, I couldn't tell you that. I'm hoping somebody to my left or right can help me.
So again, that will get spent across our property estate. So that will include, I mentioned a couple of roofs. So Highlands is separately brought out there, but we know we need to look at the roof at Springfield Stadium. We know we need to look at the roof at the Canavay Sports Centre as just a couple of examples. So anything that needs major works, we look at this fund as well as our general maintenance monies.
I was at Springfield on Saturday and survived the rain, so it wasn't leaking on the grandstand, thankfully, at that point. The gas site has been purchased from Andium for the nominal fee of £1, offset through 1.5 reduction in Andium's return to government. Why was the site purchased at the nominal value, and what assurances is there that this deferred payment structure represents fair value for the taxpayer?
I don't think it has transferred yet, but the finances, the arrangement of the finances is more of a treasury question than an infrastructure question. So I think I can see the sense in not having to find significant capital and to phase that payment over a period of years. I think if we find the capital, we'd prefer to pay it off, but. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know if there was an independent valuation undertaken before agreeing the fee?
There were valuations undertaken, yes. So the site does have at least one or two planning consents. So a valuation would have informed that, as well as a conversation with the owners.
Okay. So we're going to pass over then to
Minister, we'll revisit the fort. And perhaps it'd be good to start with, are you currently the ministerial lead for the fort project?
Yeah, and you should, if you haven't already, you should have been invited to a briefing at the fort on Friday. I'm not sure what time it is, but I think it's Friday afternoon, where we give all members an update on where we are with Fort Region.
But you are the ministerial lead for the project.
So we work, ultimately I'm the ministerial lead, but I work with the Regeneration Steering Group. And so Property Holdings, there's an officer group which is led by Andy and the head of Property Holdings, and it's got representatives from around government on there. But yes, ultimately it comes to me.
Okay. A question about its funding and the delivery of the proposed plans. A big element of the budget is the borrowing for developing the fort. But what's proposed is to only make it watertight and weathertight, and does not provide for actually creating a facility at the fort. Why was only the 43 million included in this budget?
Well, what we're trying to do is to make progress, and our aim is to lodge a planning application within days, I think, of where we are, to ensure that we can do the remedial work that's necessary. The roof, you may recall that the numbers able to enter the fort were severely restricted because of the roof, and it's probably more an issue of firefighters being able to tackle a blaze than it is people getting out, because there are many exits for people to get out of Fort Region, but the challenge is to enable firefighters to tackle a blaze safely underneath that structure. So what we plan to do is put in a planning application in the coming days, weeks, for that first tranche of work.
So the kind of question I want to understand here, though, is the project has been thrown about to be roughly a £110 million project.
Yeah.
43 in the budget. And that's funding is between 26 and 27. The budget's a 4-year budget. Is the 110 expected to be spent over the lifetime of this budget? Is a plan to deliver a usable fort by 2029? And if so, why is the money to deliver that not in the budget?
Well, what we don't know at the moment is the detail of the plans and how much we will be funding, and if anyone else will be funding any of that. So we fully expect the fort to be on track to open in December 2028. So if we're going to have a cinema complex, for example, will we provide all of the capital and charge a high rent, or will we do a partnership, public-private partnership? I don't know the answer to that question at this time. The same with the nursery. We're looking to replace the nursery on site with an up-to-date nursery which meets all of the criteria in terms of standards. And again, there's been little dialogue with the operator as to what that would look like in terms of funding. So the cost of the whole work will be in the region of £110 million. But the detail is, you may get a bit more information on Friday, but the detail is still to be finalised.
What can you share about how advanced those discussions with the various private sector bodies that could be funding are?
So as far as I'm aware, there's no commercial discussions have taken place. We've been talking to specialists in a whole range of areas, be that people that are interested in cinemas, concerts, event space, whether that's people interested in skating, play equipment, pump tracks. So we're talking to people to try and get the design well. And I think I've said, again, I forget which form I've said this in. So the original plan was to have the concert area in the Gloucester Hall and for the cinema area to be in the Queen's Hall. That now has changed. So I think it's much more joined up now with the activity area in the Gloucester Hall, which will link to the climbing area. So all of the entertainment or the majority of the entertainment for younger people will be in one part. And then the concert hall, which will be able to seat 2,000 people, a show court with 1,200 people watching, a music venue to take 2,700 people, will be next to the piazza. So if you've got a conference in there, you can have a breakout display area next to it.
The plans are one thing. The deliverability of those plans is something this panel is quite interested in. And there's clearly a lot of thought in there. There's clearly a business case behind it, but there isn't any funding secured in the budget should it be needed. And I presume the department expect at least some of the remaining funding to bridge 43 to 110 will come from the public sector. So what risk is being in essence proposed on non-delivery of the project, that we've got work that has to be done within the planned period, we know will be funded in part by the public sector, yet I'm not familiar of any other project in this budget that doesn't allocate money for work to be delivered within the planned period.
Well, doing nothing is not an option. So we've got to make the site safe. And if we continue to allow it to be deteriorate, then it's going to cost us even more. So doing nothing to make the site safe was in excess of £30 million. So the proposal at this time is to make it safe, make sure we've got the mechanical engineering in place so that we do that over the next 18 months, 2 years, ready for the fit out, as I would describe it.
So as part of the works, we absolutely will need further funding in 27-28, as you rightly highlight. There's works going on in this first phase of works. The majority of that spend is being spent on fixing the building, if I can call it that, which won't be regretted spend, because either or we've got to fix the building in any case. The roof needs attention, the glass needs attention, electrical systems, water systems, asbestos, etc. So there's a lot of, if I say property spend. We're also doing, as part of that, working with the development company, market engagement on what operators will actually be in the facility in the final form, and then what form does that shell and core fit out take. So at the moment that work hasn't been done, so that's going to need to inform exactly who we're partnering up with, what they're spending, what the form of that shell and core fit out looks like as to what we're paying for, and then ultimately what they will pay for as tenants.
And is the 43 million got that kind of work as well? The work you're talking
Yeah,
about,
so within the
development
43
funding
million, there's a big chunk of that is building works to fix things like the roof and remove asbestos and things. We are expecting the development company to be doing market engagement as well with future tenants. We don't have a list of tenants currently. We've got a list of potential uses and ideas as to what we want to see. But as part of this first phase work, it will be market engagement to secure tenants and then understand what their requirements will be. And then, as the Minister said, the balance of who's paying for what.
And what's within the 43 million, what's the funding model to engage JDC as a partner to deliver that work? How is that funded from the 43 million?
Sorry. So we will be formalising our relationship with the development company in the forthcoming weeks. At the moment, the development company they're operating under a mandate from the Regeneration Steering Group. Clearly, we're spending substantial public funds here, so we want to just put that arrangement in a more formal state, whether it be a contract or a more formalised service level agreement with the development company. Within that, we would expect within the 43 million, there'd be an overhead within that to pay for professional services.
And that would be because the 43 million is written in the budget as a drawdown off the revolving credit facility. Is it intended to then pay money to JDC to deliver this work? Or is it intended to use the other model, which is a kind of social dividend model back to government?
So we've used the social dividend model because with the surplus from the college gardens, and that I'm not sure what the detail will be in terms of the split between the drawdown and social dividend model, but there will be a breakup, and that is why we have this initial agreement with SOJDC to get us to where we're getting to, and then once the plans are in, we'll have more information about what it's going to cost. Typically, you'd expect to spend around 10% on professional fees. I think that's a rule of thumb. So we work with them as closely as we can.
Yeah. I think ultimately we're probably working with a model at the moment that government is retaining that £43 million effectively, and we will pay the bills and use the development company as our professional advisors. So that's the current sort of approach we're seeking to follow, rather than taking that £43 million and giving it to Jersey Development Company, if that makes sense.
Can I just confirm, because I know Deputy Curtis mentioned the 110 million. Is that on top of the 43, or would that income?
No, that is the expected overall figure is £110 million, and you're the accounting officer, aren't you? So
yeah,
Andy is the accounting officer for the
so
project.
A further 67 effectively on top of the 43.
Did you ask at all for any funding to be included from the government side in the budget for phase 2? Was there ever a request within the budget making process from infrastructure to see funding allocated for that from any source?
No, I think we have to, as I said earlier, look at the priorities. What can we actually deliver? We need to be able to crack on in 2026 and get the work started. We expect work, if subject to planning consent, we expect works to start in Q2, hopefully, to remove some of the asbestos, etc. We're already removing some of the kit from Fort Regent. So we've asked for what we need, and then in next year's budget, I expect there to be more funds requested.
Can I ask about the roof? That it's a listed an historical roof, but also has, as you've said, it's caused issues in the sense from the fire department's perspective. Is there a way and discussion? I think you've mentioned it before in past hearings about talking with the department, Heritage Department, to talk about how to make sure the roof is fit for purpose from a modern day perspective.
The team have done some great work with. And I'm not sure if we'll get to see some of this on Friday, where they've modelled the roof and they've got all the technical drawings. So the question at the moment, which is still, I'm not sure if it's been resolved in the last week, the question is in terms of the glazing around the side of the roof. So the roof is, I think is, I forget the listing of it, is a grade 2. Grade 2. Mm-hmm. The fort itself clearly is huge importance in terms of how special that building is, not just in local terms, but in national and international terms. So we believe that the roof structure, the look of the roof will stay the same. It's whether the glazing needs to be upgraded to X, Y, or Z. So that will depend on I dare say it's the burn time, is it?
Yeah, so the roof is structurally sound, so the work's already taken place to check the soundness of the roof. It will need recovering externally. obviously the internal makeup of the roof may yeah, if thermal efficiency, that sort of thing needs to be looked at.
I think that was where I was getting
as well
at.
as glazing around the I guess the lid as it comes down and meets the building. There's a lot of glazing around that, and there's some glazing at either end, obviously where it goes into peak. So
Certainly
it's
the
replacing that.
dome, they're looking at how they can manage the acoustics for the Queen's Hall. So that will be inside the roof or a false ceiling. Yeah.
I've got two more questions before we move on. You've mentioned, Minister, that you believe this is a minimum work required to get the site ready to be reused, but to a reuse that must be justified by some form of kind of expectation of visitor numbers. So what can you share about your projections or your department's projections about the future use of the site that justify the level of even stabilisation works that phase one suggests?
Well, I don't have a footfall number for you today. I've given you the potential for the concert hall in terms of volumes. We're looking to improve the experience at Fort Regent. So if you do go to see an event, a show, a sporting event, that you don't all arrive together and don't all leave together, because there'll be something for you to do there. But that's the detail that we're working on now with our colleagues from SOJDC in terms of we've been out, we've done detailed consultation with young and old alike. We've had that feedback from them. There's no point in us putting facilities there that no one's going to use. We've received terrifically positive feedback, particularly from our younger generation, who hopefully will be the users of Fort for many years. But in terms of footfall aspirations, I keep telling the developers, we've got to make sure that it washes its face. We've got to make sure it washes its face. Far too often, the state of Jersey have built new facilities and haven't had a revenue plan. And so I won't be signing anything off until we've got the revenue plan for the new facilities.
And that's what I was going to ask about washing its face. Could you kind of clarify what you see that meaning? Does that mean covering debt obligations? Does it mean returning a return on capital for what the site could be worth? To what extent does it need to generate revenue? And to what extent do you accept the level of even government owning the land as subsidy to a cultural piece of asset?
Yeah, so I think what is important for a lot of people is to be able to have free access to Fort Regent, whether that's so they can walk around in the dry or whether they can enjoy the gardens. So there has to be some social benefits to that, but we're working on the numbers at the moment. So,
but you want to see it, I presume, cover its debt to be able to repay its debt itself, perhaps. To what extent is this going to cover it?
The key for me is that we can ensure that we maintain the property to a good standard. It's pointless us building something that's going to fall down in 20 years' time. We've got to learn from mistakes in the past. In terms of the debt structure, well, we're still working out how it's going to be financed. So I don't know what the cost of that will be, and therefore I couldn't give you a straight answer today.
Certainly, big priorities to make sure the operational expenditure of managing that building and also the substantial area around it does pay for itself. Whether we then look at about debt repayment on top of that, again, it does depend, as the Minister said, what that debt structure actually looks like. But the first priority certainly is to make sure operationally the big estate up there, it's a very large piece of real estate, it's a very old building, can sustain itself moving forward.
Including depreciation and almost sinking for its next capital regeneration, or?
Well, depreciation is really interesting. I was talking to the team today about the value of our sewer network. And it's on the books at, I think, around 260 million? 233 million pounds. I think to replace the sewer network, you're probably looking at closer to 1.5 billion pounds, based on the current works that we're doing, price per kilometre. So, it's not something that the government does very well, in my experience, manage depreciation. And I think as we progress, we should be spending more effort and time on that kind of thing. And, Ellen spoke a little bit about some of the initiatives we're looking at. The fleet. We've got electric vehicles, in my opinion, and I talk with a bit of experience, we should be extending the life of those vehicles so we reduce the depreciation over a longer period of time. rather than replacing vehicles which have got a lot of service left in them. So I think the team do a good job in fleet management. It's just, can we get a bit more out of it?
Thank you. Deputy Ward.
So this is infrastructure projects. The estimated cost of the shoreline management plan for After Par has widened significantly, now estimated to cost about 75 million and 160 million, with delivery expected 29 to 34. Given the scale of the project, why has no provision been made in this budget for its full costing, even on a forward planning basis?
So we see the shoreline management's not a nice to have. It's essential in my opinion.
Yep.
And I think what we're trying to do is to get as much out of the project as we can in terms of extending our cycle corridor, putting in parks and gardens area, and also looking at the potential for parking in some parts, but also getting utilities conduits underneath that space.
I think the question is why is it not provision not being made in this budget?
So we have got money in this budget for the ongoing works in terms of the planning for that. And, we've done a huge amount of stakeholder engagement. We have done some modelling. We've taken on board the feedback, and we've got to do some more detailed modelling in the next 12 months.
So do you think this should be part of the shoreline management plan? Not the shoreline management plan, should be put in the Jersey Capital Investment Fund?
Yes, absolutely. Going forward, I would see that would be where I would see it sitting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has there been discussions on that so that that can be kind of cemented into any future? What are the
so
things that need to be funded?
The Council of Ministers have been briefed on the importance of the shoreline management plan. And they're aware of the level of investment. Now, future governments will have a choice whether they go ahead and invest that money or they do something else. I would strongly recommend that we do that work, because if you get a high tide in the wrong conditions, it's not a pretty picture.
So, Minister, can I just, because you were talking earlier about the importance of this capital fund to look long-term funding for important infrastructure projects or capital projects, and you've just said that is then for the future governments. So potentially there is an issue where politics gets in the way again of these capital projects. So the fund doesn't necessarily guarantee that there is funding for long-term capital.
Well, whilst we've got people involved, anything can change, can't it? But the idea of having this longer-term investment capital fund would be to give the surety of where the money's coming from and what's included in that area. The work that we're doing is first class, and we've had people come from around the world to look at the work that's being done by the team here. But it really depends on people's risk appetite, and I think we're doing work to prevent flooding in a whole range of areas around the island, and we've got to continue to do that.
No, absolutely, and I think for us as the scrutiny panel, we have talked a lot to you about this through our different quarterly hearings, and we see that the importance, and therefore that was the question of looking at the future and ensuring that if this fund goes ahead, that you are able to go, yes, now we know that there is funding for this long-term project, because we know the cost is between 75 million, 160 million till 2034. It's a lot of money, and it was just trying to pinpoint if this fund will actually help future infrastructure ministers guaranteed to have money for this project.
It is a huge amount of money, but it's a significant investment for that. And I'm just looking for the number in terms of how much we've got in this year. It's just over £1 million, isn't it?
Yeah, there's
1.5.
And there's 10 in
29.
2029.
Let's start the works.
Yeah.
There's some money in feasibility. We're also supporting that through the infrastructure rolling vote, and we need to spend about £1 million on pre-planning at this point. The tranche in 2029 that's identified is a part year of the first year of funding of a 5-year phased approach to that.
And I think what we see with the Capital Investment Fund, and it's like any other significant government investment. There is only so much affordability, so much money at a time. Clearly, we would seek to look at the capital investment fund, balance of priorities within that capital investment fund, and the government of the day, of the future day, and the day after that. These projects are very long ranging, and some of them will extend into multiple governments. And so, how we balance priorities going over certainly the next decade is an issue not just for this government, but probably for the next two governments. And it's always a balance of the relative priorities at the time. So clearly, this is a high priority for us. I think this is incredibly important for the island. And definitely there'll be other priorities as well across capital investment. And so depending on the funding envelopes at the time and the risk appetite, as the Minister said, that effectively is the equation that we're trying to balance every time we do a government plan.
Part of the difficulty we have with capital at the minute is that in the budget 26, only 26 number is being approved. All of the other years are indicative. So, of course, you can get to that year and by then it's changed. It's getting what we need to understand in terms of how this will work in future is what that means for us, really, how it will fix and help us to plan a bit better on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so change subject slightly. The panel notes that under table 19 feasibility, the provision of £100,000 for a vehicle testing service. Please can you provide more information about the proposed vehicle testing service?
Well, it's something I kicked the can down the road on, basically. We've done a huge amount of work with DVS over the last 12, 18 months. We've started to bring more services online. We've tried to improve the customer experience, particularly for the traders and the operators, so people that sell vehicles, but also people that operate heavy goods vehicles. And my thought was that the priority should be there, practical steps that we can help business to start with before building a new vehicle centre. And the other thing we're looking at is our current facility we have in Balazan. Could we do something with DVS and our fleet management under one roof?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so Minister, during the CSP hearing last week, you suggested that the Eastern Cycle Corridor may be more aspirational than deliverable in this stage. Has any feasibility funding been allocated towards that project, or has this been deprioritised entirely?
No, we're trying to get some practical solutions for the Eastern Cycle route, and at the CSP hearing, I thought I made it clear that there, in my opinion, we could do some very cost-effective measures if the parishes would support them to enable an Eastern Cycle corridor from Gore Reeve through to St Saviour's. We're in dialogue with those parishes. We've been trying to buy some land in St Clement's without much luck, I think it's fair to say. But we have spent significant money on the Eastern Cycle corridor or corridors over recent years, and we're trying to push ahead with some of that.
So please can you clarify what will be delivered under the project entitled Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Delivery Programme? Allocation was 255,000 within Table 19 feasibility.
So we've got a joint working group with the Parish of St Helier and Cycle for Jersey, where we're looking at a number of routes through town and to get people into town, and I think that's making reasonable progress. I think the team work hard in that area. We've invested significantly in cycle parking in St Helier. The team continue to work, but we are one of 13 highway agencies, and so we need the support and cooperation of the other 12 to get networks in place, and particularly in the east of the island, we're working hard there. But I don't know if it was earlier this year or the end of last year, we did a lot of work on the new cycleway from the Rockier School through to the FB Fields, for example, with signage, etc.
Yeah, I just wanted to reference back to a strategic panel hearing on the 28th of October. You stated that I think we could do the Eastern Cycle route very cheaply and had found a route working with interested parties. What proportion of the funding allocated to the Cycle and Walking Infrastructure Delivery Programme is allocated to this work stream?
Well, that's what I've just explained. There is a route which
Okay.
you basically need to put a bit of paint on the road and put 2 bollards in the road. So it's pretty cheap and effective. And so
How far away from delivering that?
well, we're in discussions with the 2 roads committees that I mentioned
okay.
earlier.
Okay.
And if I can't get the agreement of the roads committees, then I'm going to struggle. In the meantime, we are trying to buy a very small piece of land to improve the visibility display at a junction to offer another alternative route on bikes.
Okay. Fine, thank you.
So I personally go out and ride routes with interested parties, with officers, and try and come up with solutions because it's something I'm quite keen on.
So if you get a couple of cooperative roads committees, you're in business.
Yeah, and I think we've got. I think one of them has moved towards the solution. So we couldn't get on the October agenda. Hopefully, we may get on the November agenda. Yeah, but the teamwork. The team are passionate about this, and I support their passion.
So the total infrastructure projects allocation for 2026 has risen from 29 million and 96 to 34.08 million. What accounts for this £4 million increase, and which projects are expected to benefit most from the additional funding? And does any of that relate to reprofiling from delayed projects in 2025?
Exactly that. It's 4.3 million that's been reprofiled from 25 to 26 in respect to the liquid waste key infrastructure projects, which is the St Peter storage tank and Northern Sewer. Okay. It's just a timing thing. There's no extra.
No, on that front. Okay, fine, thank you. So who do I hand over to? Liquid waste.
Colin on liquid waste, actually.
Yes,
Good.
liquid waste for me. The starting question is the cost of liquid waste key infrastructure project has risen from 21.3 billion in last year to 51.3 million now. What has been the major contribution to this 30 million differential?
I think we've clarified the timeline and looked at further projects. The first time we had the allocation, it was for a more limited range of projects.
I think what's interesting, the St Peter's works, the second phase starts today with the work for the attenuation tank at St Peter's. But the northern extension, which goes right up the main road at St John's design, we take sewage from your parish in St Mary and from right across further east than the zoo, almost to Mofor. So it's 20 of the 109 pumping stations on the island produce sewage to go down the Grand Route to Saint Jean. So it's a significant project. The pipe goes from a 400 millimetre pipe to a 600 millimetre pipe, which increases the volume by 2.25. So we've got hundreds of properties that are not connected to main sewers, which should be connected to main sewers. I'm not talking about properties in far-flung locations. We're talking about properties that sit adjacent to main roads. We simply don't have the capacity today. So this is fantastic investment in our island's infrastructure and one that I wholeheartedly welcome.
Yeah, that answer runs on to my next question about the which projects are currently constrained by drainage capacity, and how does this budget provide assurance that those constraints will be addressed? And you mentioned one in particular.
Well, I'm not sure in terms of constrained. It's 2025 and we've got far too many homes in Jersey that aren't on mains drains and aren't on mains water, which are adjacent to major routes, and we've got to put in place the infrastructure to receive those goods. In parts on the St John's Main Road, they're going to be digging to between 4 and 4.5 metres deep. A lot of that by hand because of what I describe as a spaghetti junction of services that run above the sewer, including a 90 kV electric cable that takes power to Guernsey. So it's not insignificant work that the team, and we've got 2 contractors working simultaneously to shorten the length of the works, time of the works. Sorry.
Could I ask, given that significant increase and given the project, what breakdown you can share with us about which liquid waste projects are costing how much? So you've mentioned obviously the attenuation tanks coming online as a project, Grand Rue de Saint-Jean.
So
What's costing what?
So the work on the Grand Rue de Saint-Jean, off the top of my head, is £7.5 million investment. And I have to look to my left for the details of the St. Peter's attenuation tank. There's the work on the St. Peter's attenuation tank, and then there's the work on the sewers to get the product to the tank. So have you got the numbers?
The attenuation tank main contracts just over 10 million. The network extensions 1.3 to 5, something like that, I think. The other thing that I was picked up, you asked about the increase in cost from 20 to 50. What's been identified in the budget this time is an ongoing £10 million per annum investment. In last time's budget, it was limited to the first 2 years of that investment, in much the same way that, say, for the Fort Region project earlier, the initial allocation. The timeline has been extended. There's an assumption about funding streams for that, but it's just the program itself is an ongoing investment that spans multiple years, and you're just seeing more years of it in this program.
We've done a lot of work also to separate surface water from the sewers. You'll remember the work that was done on St Albans Road and underneath Victoria Avenue. So we receive too much surface water at the sewage treatment works, and by separating them, it means it's more efficient for us, but also when we get peak flows and heavy rain, that we can process everything that we receive.
Yeah, if I may go back to your earlier answer to the constraints, etc. I appreciate that. Yes, if there are houses which are easily connectable to mains drainage, so there should be. But is it not the case that certain building projects are not being able to be performed because of the lack of drainage capacity?
I think the works. So we've got significant works happening in St Peter's at the moment, and the works are underway. We've got around 60 new homes in the Zion area, some in St Helier, some in Trinity, some in St John's, and the works are underway. We've got planning in for St Martin's. I think those plans have been lodged for St Martin's, and I don't know if we've had the result of the planning appeal, have we?
On the Mofon tank, yes, I think that was dismissed, so we've got planning consent for that. I think the quick answer is yes, all new development is constrained. Our drainage network is at capacity, so it is that's underlying the business case for these significant investments in our drainage network. The storage tanks especially are designed to add to capacity to the network, so new affordable housing sites can be built.
Yes,
so and also existing homes. It's really important that we've been talking about this for decades about getting more properties connected to the mains, and we really got to start delivering.
We undertake a drainage impact assessment on every new development, so that could be one unit all the way up to 100 or 150 housing units. So that assessment is undertaken for all development by the Drainage Authority, and there are parts of the island that are at capacity. So that is a constraint on development.
Yeah. I'm going back to the British Island Plan. My recollection is that certain projects were anticipated there, but when it came to it, they couldn't be implemented because of the lack of drainage.
We've inherited the Bridging Island Plan in
because I'm not blaming any particular minister for that. Yeah. That's where we are. Okay.
Well, I think the work that was done by the Scrutiny panel in the last, not the last government, but the government before that time was a good piece of work which identified a lot of those challenges that we're trying to deal with.
Okay, thanks for
that. Can I just correct? I mentioned the figure earlier on. That was just the 26 figure. The St Peter's storage tank, including fees and start to end process, is about 15 million.
15.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. Moving on then. You also make reference. Well, the budget notes that 2027 funding was supported by asset disposals. Which assets are you contemplating in that connection?
So we're still in discussion over that.
Have any been identified as if you were to kind of rate assets as likely to be able to be disposed of to impossible, like a school perhaps, Are there assets that currently have high confidence that they could be disposed of?
Well, we're in the process of disposing one or two properties, but not to the value of £10 million. So, yeah.
Okay.
And if we don't identify assets, or will that hold up?
That will slow things down because we'll need the money to do the work, and we can't start the work until we've got the money.
So you're
tell me, isn't
dependent
it?
on them. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Moving on to the proposed new liquid waste charging mechanism, which is due to begin in 2028. The budget estimates revenue of 10 million a year from that. What will this mechanism involve, and when is it expected to be brought forward for approval?
Well, it's I think we're the only utility which is currently free of charge, and we're subject, as you've just identified, David, to government funding. So the terms of reference for the waste charging should be finalised shortly, and hopefully we can share those with you in pretty quick time so that you can give us any feedback. We then need to go out to consultation about the scope of the charging and the method of charging and what the public expect from their liquid waste, because let's not forget, if you don't benefit from mains drains, you pay additional money to for your sewage taken away. So
Certain parishioners have noticed that.
people get a double whammy, don't they? And you know, is that fair? I'm not sure that it is fair, personally. Yeah.
In terms of funding mechanisms, would it not make sense to use the rate mechanism as we have in place at this moment in time as a way to charge for waste?
The island-wide rate.
Island-wide rate, yes. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
we know about
Well,
the
certainly-
size of properties. so
Certainly
therefore
something I suggested many years ago was that we use the island-wide rate because I was on the other side of the table in 2017 when officers did an enormous amount of work trying to bring in a liquid waste charge for commercial premises. And we pointed out that a lot of small commercial premises used far less water than some large properties around the island. And we felt there were a number of different mechanisms where you could introduce that charge, and this is why we need to go out to consultation. And so I think there are a number of mechanisms to use to charge. We'll have to choose a mechanism and crack on.
seems to be the fairest in terms of, because it's appropriate to each property.
Yeah, I think I see that, but I think you'll find other people will argue against that, depending on the type of property they have. So it is I think it's a good mechanism to use, but I think we need to go into consultation and look at the detail, because the devil is always in the detail. But the terms of reference we hope will be out shortly, which we can share with you to get feedback from yourselves and others. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you've answered my next question in part. I mean, how was this 10 billion revenue figure calculated, and what assumptions have been made regarding household and insurance contributions?
Well, I don't think the £10 million figure is going to be sufficient to cover all of. Well, it won't be sufficient enough to cover all of our liquid waste costs.
Right.
I think that £10 million was identified as a shortfall, and you know, I think we should be looking at what are the true costs of managing our liquid waste. And back to Deputy Curtis's point about depreciation, and you know, what is it we need to raise to make sure that we've got a sewage system that's fit for 2025 and beyond. So £10 million is the figure that's been identified, but I would just look at double checking that figure. You know, and it's got to be achievable. We've got to be able to deliver this.
Okay, well, thanks for that health warning, as it were. But as to the developing the charging system, you mentioned in a previous quarterly hearing that only around £300,000 was available to fund this, which I think you've said might not be realistic.
Well, I think the team in the department probably kicked me under the table when I said that. So I think we're capable of working with colleagues in various departments to deliver something. It will really depend on how much time and resource we put into the consultation, which needs to be significant. We need to do a good job on that piece.
And the system will be developed entirely by infrastructure or in concert with Jersey Water? I mean, how do the
Well,
two
that would,
overlap?
if we went down the route that David's just suggested, we wouldn't involve Jersey Water necessarily. If we used the traditional model, we would work with Jersey Water, I'd imagine. But that's the detail that we've got to work through. So do you get charged on what you use and therefore what you release, or do you get charged on the size of your premise? So.
Right, so it's not necessarily the previous idea, which was that what you took in effectively you would expel, and therefore there would have to be
So
collaboration with
the
Jersey Water.
downside for the island-wide rate, which is I support that concept, is if you've got a 5-bedroom house and there's only 2 of you in there, you're not going to be using as much water as a 3-bedroom house with 6 people in there. So, is it a user pays or are you paying on the size of your property? So that's why we need to go into consultation and detailed consultation. I think what I've tried to do over the last 18 months is raise the importance of the need to invest in this area of our infrastructure, as well as other areas, but this area in particular, because it is not fair and equitable in this day and age that some residents have to pay to have their sewage removed, other people have it taken away free of charge. And, we need to find a system where we can continue to invest in that network. We've got Victorian sewers running under St Helier today, which is fantastic achievement by the people that built them. But how long will they last?
Yeah, I'll finish that, yeah.
Thank you. And we're turning now a little bit back to something that the panel has been wanting to do with for a while, Minister, but we haven't found the time to do it, is looking a little bit at one of the CSP revitalising town focus a little bit. So maybe using the last 20 minutes for that. How do you define revitalising town, and what's your role in this?
Well, I was asked about this at the CSP review, but I'm delighted to have another opportunity because we've got a retail strategy, we've got a visitor strategy, which both talk about the need and the importance of investing in our public realm. It's well documented fact that where there is investment in public realm, you see lower vacancies in retail outlets, you see higher spends. And it's, I met with an islander last week who was talking to me about the need to spend more money tarmacking the roads. And this person's children have left the island. And when I sat down with this person, I explained to them that, yes, we need to tarmac the roads, but will your children come back because the roads are smooth? Or will they come back because St Helier is a vibrant place where people want to live and work and visit? And so it's not a case of doing one or the other, it's about the need to invest. And we had a debate in the last sitting or the sitting before about green space in St Helier. And, I'm due to go and visit Broad Street shortly, but I thought they were putting a soakaway into Broad Street. And I said, what's going on with this plastic boxes? And it's all about being able to plant trees into the ground and a root system network. It's really fascinating stuff. So we've got to invest in St Helier. We've had at least 5 applicants for new alfresco or extended alfresco licenses in the New Street area. And if you stop and look there, and I think it's terrific what's been achieved there. And I'm hoping that in December we'll have events in Broad Street. I'm expecting to see mulled wine and roasted chestnut at the very least when I come to town to shop.
Thanks, thank you, Minister. And I suppose that you were talking there about tangible actions that you can list, and of course the CSP said delivering a plan to revitalise town. So it was a plan, not necessarily the actions. Do you still feel that there are things that there needs to be a plan to have more for the future, or do you feel that by the end of the term, feeling that most of those actions have been done to?
Oh, they won't all be done. It's a significant pieces of work. I'm not sure when you ever finish, but we are working. The Halkett Street is a great example where we worked together with the parish of St Helier, and Deputy Gardner brought a proposition that we would do more of that type of partnership work with them. So it certainly won't all be done by the end of
So
the
will
term.
we see a plan?
I think
Do we
you will
have-
see.
Do we have a plan?
Well, we
coming?
have got a plan which we're happy to share. You know, we're just consulting at the moment around the Blue Note area in terms of the next phase of work, in terms of the design. We're looking to declutter that. But yeah, very happy. In fact, it'd be useful for you as a panel to have a briefing from the team that work on this area.
That would be very useful to see, and of course, not just there, but this plan for revitalising town as a whole and what that looks like for the future. And I suppose you've just talked about that collaboration and working with the parish of St Helier. How has the funding and decision making been shared between the department and parish, and who ultimately signs off capital works or maintenance contracts? Like, how does that collaboration work?
Well, I think we've got. I think it was mentioned in the CSP, one of the reviews we've done in the last week, that infrastructure have a very good relationship with their colleagues in the parish of St Helier, with almost daily dialogue. You know, we do a lot of work jointly. I don't know how Halkett Street evolved because it was before my time. The works were planned there. But certainly we liaise with the parish and the parish liaise with ourselves on a whole range of things. As I mentioned earlier, we've got this joint group looking at walking and cycling initiatives, also with interested parties joining that group. So it is quite a mature relationship.
And does the 2026 budget include... it doesn't seem to have a dedicated line for revitalising town. So is the funding coming from the public realm rolling vote? Is that where it comes from?
Is it called IRV?
Okay. And how does that link with St Helier and their budgeting, and how does?
Well, we wait to be approached by St Helier in terms of the projects they want to work with us on. You know, we're also working with Parish of St Helier and the CLS department in a buggy for people who have mobility challenges to be able to move people in and around St Helier. So that's quite an exciting project. It's like an airport trolley, like a golf cart. And so our colleagues from DVS and Transport are working with the parish very closely to try and get that up and running before Christmas.
Would that be a continued revenue line, a service offered by ESH?
No, I understand it's the parish of St Helier. Okay. I don't think we're not providing any funding. What we're providing is the expertise and hopefully the when is a vehicle not a vehicle and all that kind of stuff. And so we're providing the professional advice on that. So that's quite exciting.
And you talked before about the public-private partnerships with Fort Regent, for example, but is there any other discussions of that happening within town itself and the potential plans there be where there could be more of these public-private partnerships?
Not to my knowledge at the moment. The other thing that we are doing is finally putting up, I think it's called flags for the hopper bus, because we really want to get the message out about the hopper bus and how it's a great way of getting around St Helier, and the ability for people to use a through ticket. So if they're coming in from one of the parishes, they can jump on the hopper bus. So if you're like me and get the number 5, you can get off at the hospital, walk around the corner to the Adelphi, and not the Adelphi, Chimes, and get the bus to the market. So it's a great way of getting around, and we've just got to get that message out more and more.
And at our last quarterly hearing, officials said that Ireland's main car parks currently have spare capacity. Yet, Minister, you said that new parking is needed. How do those two positions align? Is this about an overall shortage or issues of accessibility and maintenance?
Well, some of it's about age and accessibility. So Minden Street is over 50 years old, and whenever I park in Minden Street, I always end up at the top to try and find a space that's big enough to park in. That's probably more to do with my driving ability than anything else. So we know that these assets have got a certain lifetime. It would be wrong to allow Minden Place to come to the end of its life and not have an alternative. So we're better to find an alternative that we can build before doing anything with Minden Place.
And I suppose turning to something we've talked about before, which is the market and revitalising as part of the plan to revitalise the market. But you said in the CSP hearing, of course, and you've said that before in hearings, not 12 million redesign is not what is needed, but to be more smart. What are the kind of things that we would see in the next 12 months to make to specific works the market?
Well, I think,
be smarter.
I'm delighted that we've got people on new leases rather than rolling annual lease. I was delighted last week or the week before to see some stories about businesses who have really pleased to be part of that community, but part of the money in the maintenance will be used on the floor in particular, and the fish market is where our first priority is. So we're hoping that some of that work will happen in Q1 next year.
Could I ask on any of this expenditure, whether it be the market floor or in particular the roads, how are you assessing and justifying the value for money on expenditure? So whether it's choosing the materials, the contractors, given the sums involved, how is that then articulated to the public and to members that the expenditure is just and proportionate?
Well, we go through a pretty rigorous and robust tendering process for all of our work. In terms of the materials are chosen as part of the design. So I think that's how we work, and I think I'd like the procurement process to be quicker, but it is very thorough, which means that we can take confidence from the fact that we're getting a good value for our money. In terms of, I know it's not what you're asking about, but the major works for the sewer upgrades, we've got 3 local companies working on those projects. So it's great that we've got local people providing those services, so the pound rotates in Jersey.
Given you're the main purchaser for public infrastructure on the island, I presume, for roadworks, for especially the public realm redelivery, to what extent does the department have knowledge and is able to baseline that against, for example, the UK market? Given compared to the private, often the private sector might know more. In this case, your department should be the expert on knowing this and then understanding where to.
Fantastic. I should have brought 2 different officers with me because I had a lesson recently on the different quality of stone and the cost of stone and the lifetime of the stone. And believe you me, the guys and girls in the team are all over this. And when it comes to the resurfacing, I think we do almost open book, don't we? So there's only one major provider on the island, and that work is done on an open book basis. And we're working with that partner to try and regenerate some of the planings that we get. And we're looking at different surfaces, and we've got people going to Guernsey shortly to look at what Guernsey do, because if we could get away from the micro asphalt, I would. But we've got to seal the roads with something, and so we're looking to see what other materials could we use that would give particularly cyclists and motorcyclists a smoother ride. So the team are all over it.
Could you just, because it's very interesting, clarify what that open book relationship with a supplier means and how that ensures value for money? Because I don't know if we've discussed the government having open book relationships with its providers and all parties being happy and finding it constructive.
Well, I'll have to pass you to officers because I'm not party to those discussions.
It sounds like quite a big step in ensuring governance.
I've asked those very questions and I've been reassured. Who wants to answer that?
I'm happy to. So again, as the Minister's mentioned, we've got some specific advice. So although we've got technical experts, we've got a commercial expert who's embedded within the department that provides a lot of support. So again, it's somebody that's independent into that review. As part of the open book, that's tied into that contract. So again, that we have that transparency. We make sure most of our major contracts, we're having regular monthly meetings with those contractors on that work, certainly when it's that ongoing. So, and again, everything there is documented and reported up. So, it's about us learning and understanding what's happening in the market, not just within Jersey, but in UK and Europe. So we do a lot of market analysis as well. There's lots going on.
It's fascinating, the detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how then, I suppose, linking this, because, you know, you were talking about asphalt and of course, but in town especially, that this more, I suppose, material is different, because we see in different places and at Newcastle, etc., that the material is of different quality, and there's been a lot of discussion about that within the public space. So what lessons have you learned from those particular projects so far on that kind of the potential cost in these areas, and how to show that there has been this analysis that's happened with material, there has been a balance and in prioritisation, etc., to show that this is value for the public?
Well, I think the biggest lessons from the New Cut work was around communication, and we didn't get it right all the time. And so we've taken those lessons into the next phase, and I think we are doing a much better job around communication. In terms of the products, you know, we are trying to make the areas somewhere where people are happy to spend time and want to go to those areas. And you know, I've seen some of the correspondence about New Cut and New Street, and talking to some of the businesses in that area prior to the works and during the works, their view is pretty different to what it is now in some cases, which, you know, there's businesses that are thriving following those works as a result of those works, and it's really good to see. And if you look at the design and the rounded building faces on the four corners, and you've got the compass in the middle, it's really clever what they've done. And yeah, I think the team should be congratulated on their work. And you know, we are delivering, as I said, for both the retail and the visitor strategies in trying to help revitalise St Helier and ensure that it is a place where people want to come and visit. And
so I know you've mentioned that you want to share the plan with Scrutiny, but what next after, you know, there's been a lot of discussions about New Cross and the Broad Street, but what is the next plan?
Broad Street is a significant piece of work, which will be done in phases to try and not hit peak retail times. So, you know, we're due to be out of there for, I think it's the third week in November, and not do any work over the busy Christmas period. We're happy to get the team to brief you on that. I think it'd be quite exciting.
But what will happen next after Broad Street? I mean, what is the next area? There are other areas in town that need some.
Yeah, so that's we want to tidy up Conway Street. We're not paving over Library Place, contrary to some people's commentary. We are looking to tidy up Library Place, but we're not looking to pave over it. So yeah, there's some exciting plans for. I think the focus is about getting things done. So the focus for me at the moment with the team is to get Broad Street consultation finished and crack on with the next phase.
And you've talked a little bit about doing Broad Street in phases to minimise that economic impact. And, you know, how does the department assess that in general? And I suppose that is a wider question. Of course, we've talking about Broad Street, you know, when there is economic impacts on small businesses or businesses in general, or people having access to community spaces, how is that assessed?
Well, we've had precincts in Jersey for many, many years, and as someone that used to be involved in delivering to those businesses, there are times when you're able to deliver to them and you schedule your work around that. I was encouraged when I was going through the airport recently with one retailer from Broad Street who said, "Fantastic, Andy, at last something's happening." And I took heart from that person because, you know, we've got to invest in the product of Jersey and the product of St Helier, and I'm proud to say that that's what we're doing.
Right. And so just finally, just to confirm, where there is a plan for what's happening next. Of course, we've talked about what is happening now, but there is a plan coming forth, and that will be funded under the rolling public vote rather than a particular budget line and particular funding to
Yeah.
2.5 million that's ring fenced in the infrastructure rolling vote for public realm projects.
2.5 million. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think turning to my panel if there's anything else. No, well, Minister, thank you very much
Thank you.
for that. Thank you, officers, for